Good afternoon, members of the media and the people of Bermuda. Thank you for your attendance at this press conference today and for your attention. During Thursday's press conference in this very room, I informed the public about a cyber attack that has impacted government services. I know that this news was concerning for many in the community, and I want to reassure that there has been a non-stop effort by the government to identify what happened, how it happened, and to resume business and normal operations safely. It is clear that this was a sophisticated and deliberate attack that has resulted in unprecedented stress of basic government systems. There has been an impact on the delivery of services to the public, and the work is ongoing to establish a safe restoration of those systems which have been impacted. It is important to note that the nature of this attack and the work that is underway to address it is a matter of national security. And as such, there will be some information that I'm unable to divulge at this time. What happened? An infiltration of government systems occurred late on Wednesday evening, and it was first noticed by officers on Thursday morning. The Bermuda Police Service and the government's Department of Information and Digital Technology immediately began to assess the nature of the attack. They made every effort to isolate the point at which the infiltration occurred and to contain it. What did we do? Once it became clear that this was not an ordinary interruption to the network, in accordance with best practice, all government network users were immediately directed to disconnect and shut down all devices connected to the network. The government network was then shut down in line with best practice to provide the best chances for recovery and mitigate further risk of incursion. By early Thursday evening, and having assessed the scope of the attack and its sophistication, in concert with the Cabinet, I directed the engagement of specialist assistance to support the local efforts. There has been no shortage of offers of assistance from the private sector, which have been gratefully received where it can be used. And I wish to thank private sector partners who have so willingly offered to come to the assistance of the government of Bermuda. Concurrent with the restoration effort, work has been accelerated on deploying an enhanced network within the government of Bermuda with upgraded security. For existing systems that have not been impacted, the aim is to restore them safely with added and enhanced protections. This will assist in standing up government services and providing access to those services to the public. Since Thursday, there have been 4 meetings of the full Cabinet, and the Cabinet Committee on Cybersecurity has met as required. All meetings were held to receive updates on this event, fully understand its implications, and to provide the necessary approvals for the work that must be done to restore our systems. Additionally, Her Excellency, the Governor, this morning chaired a meeting of the Governor's Council, at which myself, the Attorney General, the Minister of National Security, and the Minister for Tourism of the Cabinet Office attended to discuss the latest issues with the Governor and how we can continue to work collaboratively in the effort to address this attack. The Public Service Executive, led by the Acting Head of the Public Service, has met regularly and is leading efforts to continue delivering critical services to the people of Bermuda. And the Ministry of Finance team is also working to ensure that just as weekly paid employees receive salaries and wages on Friday, monthly paid employees will likewise be paid at the end of this week as scheduled. So where are we now? Since the opening for business today, we've continued to assess the delivery of public services, and the government will continue to issue updates for the benefit of the public. I am pleased to note that critical areas like transport, education, and the hospital are operating without interruption, providing service to the community as usual. The restoration effort is fully underway, and we are working on putting out a timeline that persons can follow of the timelines that will be used to get our systems back online safely. I have been in contact with the Leader of the Opposition and other key stakeholders, and will provide briefings to ensure that there is a collective understanding of the situation and the efforts underway to address it. The next several days will be critical in managing the recovery and restoration work. No resources being spared, and at the core of our efforts is the safety and security of the systems on which Bermudians and residents rely. I am satisfied that we will get to that point based on the expert assistance that we have and the dedication already being displayed by all individuals on the front line. In closing, please allow me to address the issue of my travel to Washington, D.C. on Thursday. Government leadership is not just about the moment, but also consistently having an eye on the future. The meetings that were confirmed in Washington, D.C. had taken, in some instances, months of engagement to secure. Direct interaction with key legislators and key members of their staff is difficult to secure at the best of times, and I determined that keeping those meetings, as well as discussions to advance foreign direct investment in Bermuda, was necessary. Make no mistake, though I may not have been physically present on island, Thursday and Friday and Saturday, those days were spent fully connected to the issues here at home. It may make for good political sport to paint this trip as something other than what it really was, but that should not overshadow the ongoing efforts by the government of Bermuda to address this very serious matter. Let me again commend the dedication of public officers, all of whom have worked throughout the weekend, and the support of our union partners, private sector, and local banks who are working with us so that we can continue to deliver services for the people of Bermuda. I again thank the public for their continued patience and understanding, and we will ensure that you are kept up to date with the government's restoration efforts. Before I go to questions, it may be, as I said, political sports, but make no mistake, the government of Bermuda was attacked. Not the PLP, not anyone else, the government was attacked. And we are responding as a government, and I hope that we can make sure that we focus on the issues that matter to the people of Bermuda. Happy to take questions.
We'll start with the broadcasting. Gary Forster-Skelton. Gary, the first question.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mr. Premier. Do you know if any of the personal data of residents has been breached or lost or sent elsewhere?
The investigation efforts are still ongoing, and it would not be wise for me to comment on any specifics at this time.
Would we read that as we don't know yet?
I answered the question.
Can you confirm or deny if the cyber attack is ransomware, and has government been asked for money, and if so, how much?
Our focus is making sure that we get government systems up, running safely and securely, and that's where the focus of the government of Bermuda is currently.
So are you telling me that you will not tell us whether it's ransomware or not?
I've just answered the question.
That was not an answer to the question, but if government were asked to pay a ransom, who would make that call? Would that be the government or the governor?
I know that there's a whole lot of speculation. The focus of the government of Bermuda right now is getting our systems back up and running to restore public services, and that's what we are being engaged around the clock to. Ministers have been working all weekend, public officers have worked all weekend, and that is our focus.
Well, in a ministerial statement on June 16th, National Security Minister Michael Weeks spoke about plans for a dedicated cybersecurity unit that was not yet operational and continuing the, quote, development and implementation of the government cybersecurity program, end quote. What do you say to those who may argue that this statement broadcast Bermuda's vulnerability to cyber attacks, or at the very least, put a question mark over our ability to withstand one?
So I think that's a very valid question. The fact is that there's a delicate line that needs to be tread between making sure that as elected leaders we are transparent, especially when it comes to Parliament, where governments must be accountable to Parliament, to make sure we share that information for the benefit of lawmakers that sit inside of Parliament. So I accept the premise of where you're coming from, but we certainly wanted to make sure that we updated the public on the efforts in which we are taking. It should be noted that cybersecurity, upon us coming into office, was moved to the Ministry of National Security, as we view it as a national security issue, much far broader than a technical issue. And there's been significant work that has been done. I mean, there's many ministers around me who have been locked out of their accounts because they haven't, completed the monthly and regular training. So the fact is that we continue to make our systems more strong and more resilient. But, these are things that have happened in numerous places, cases and instances where there are spaces, so we just need to continue the work to make sure we get better.
returning to the question though, do you think the way that you approach talking about cyber security in ministerial statements, might you have pause?
So just so you're clear, in all matters that are related to these are conversation discussion which we have. We make sure that the information that we put out is okay to be put out. There are certainly more sensitive information that we don't release that came to the Minister of National Security as part of our review. So what was deemed and what was stated by the Minister of National Security is what we wanted to make sure was in the public domain so people could understand what their government was doing.
And when was the last time a stress test or a vulnerability assessment was performed on government systems?
I'm not sure if I could answer that specifically, but I think that those things happen regularly. Is there a specific answer you have for that? I don't know a specific. Yeah, on that one. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So we don't know.
We can get a specific answer for that if you want.
Please.
The minister has just said, but I'm sure those things happen regularly.
Have senior persons within government IT given any previous warnings about vulnerabilities in our systems or the possibilities of attack? And if so, for how long? How long have those been warnings?
Can you repeat that question?
Sorry. Have senior persons within government IT given any previous warnings about vulnerabilities in our systems or the possibility of attack?
So, you had just stated that the minister had made a statement regarding our cybersecurity and the measures that we're taking to upgrade those measures. So I think that it's pretty self-explanatory.
That was the government's, that was the minister's statement. I'm wondering if senior members in government IT have given warnings and how far back do those warnings go?
I think that we constantly review our government IT systems and constantly make changes. I'm not following what you're trying to get at, so maybe you want to be more specific.
Have you got logged warnings or logged information from government IT, senior persons in government IT who have said, we need to deal with this, or has
Well, just so we're clear, we have been dealing with it. There's been significant investment to upgrade government infrastructure and security. That is what you had mentioned about the minister's statement. That is an effort that is ongoing. Some of those efforts will be accelerated. It's difficult to upgrade existing networks while you're working on them. And so, as I said in my statement, part of the work of which we are engaged in is building a secure, separate network that persons we moved on to minimize future challenges that do exist.
So that would be a business continuity plan, essentially. Does the government have any kind of business continuity plan?
Yes.
It does.
Yes.
But doesn't this attack reveal that continuity plan is not sufficient?
So I think that it's important to recognize, Gary, that the size, scope, and nature of this is significant. And I think that is the gravity of which we are stating. And despite the best plans, I can tell you every business has a business continuity plan because cybersecurity and those are the types of things we have to do. There's incident response plans, there's ways we have to go. But we've seen some very large companies that have been challenged, and despite the best plans that you have, sometimes things get in the way. Thankfully, we have a dedicated team of public officers who have been able to make sure that we can withstand and maintain public services. There are a number of services that were brought back up today that were unavailable earlier, and those measures will continue. So I don't believe it is correct and proper to say that there is no business continuity plan, etc. We do have it, and that is what you are seeing, so we can continue to deliver public services.
And final question is, what government systems were backed up prior to the attack, and when, and what systems were not backed up, and who is in charge of backing up those systems?
Well, that is something that is very technical. I think that our backups are done on a very regular basis. I think the last backup was done on Wednesday night. I think that question had come, and that has been answered already. The Minister responsible for IT has said, yes, that was done. So those are regular processes that occur.
All government systems?
There's multiple different systems in government. I mean, I can't get into all of them specifically, but what I can state is that, as I indicated in my remarks, not all government systems were impacted. However, due to an abundance of caution for containment, government services were taken offline. some of those government services of unaffected systems are being restored. For example, today, Registrar of Companies is up, ETCD is up, gov.bm is up, e-tax is up. There are certain systems that were not impacted, but because we wanted to ensure that there was not an extension of the threat, those ones were taken offline and we're slowly recovering them.
Thank you, Gary. Jonathan, you have some questions from the RG?
I do.
Yes.
Thanks, Minister. I appreciate you. To start with, maybe I was the person. Have we stopped the breach, or is it ongoing? Are there hackers still in our system?
I have to refer back to my statements, and the measure I think that is particularly important to know, and of course it's the reason why I'm joined by the Assistant Commissioner today, because this is a national security matter as well, and so to be very specific on other things, I do not believe will be helpful. What I can say is we are focused on the restoration of our systems, as I just Gary, that work is ongoing. There were systems that were brought up today, ongoing, and as I had explained, everyone has had a round-the-clock effort in making sure that we can restore public services to the people of Bermuda in a safe fashion.
I think you said that you would give a time frame for when things
We were going to make sure that we continue to work through, as I said. There's a number of various things that are happening, a lot. And so when we're talking about all the teams that are working on the restoration efforts, there's large parts of this. Now, the government has decided, as you heard me say in my statement and in my responses to Gary, that we are developing and building a new network. So things may be slower, but what we want to do is to make sure that as we bring people back online, that they're going online in a more secure environment that the government was already developing. That work has been accelerated, and we're going to be moving to the new network.
just in general, are you able to say anything about the time frame?
The time frame for what specifically?
Restoring service.
Which services? Some services came back up today. For government services, are you saying to full back to regular? As soon as it's safe to do so. We do not have specific answers, but for full functionality that may have existed, we may be talking about a couple of weeks. But that's for all services. The fact is there are some services that are up right now that were not available last week that have been put back online because they're for systems that were determined to be not affected.
That's they've gone back up. Do we still have UK authorities involved in helping government get on top of this?
What I would say is that when it comes to the United Kingdom, we did have a meeting with the governor and governor's council today, and it will certainly be inappropriate for me to discuss what is said in governor's council with the media.
So we're big on fintech. Do you have any concern that as a fintech hub we've suffered some reputational damage?
I think that there's not, I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say that this is something that is not negative. But the fact is, Jonathan, that I'm sure throughout your research of the weekend, these are things that do happen quite often. This is the nature of IT systems when, despite the significant investment that has been placed on improving government security and also user awareness, that is also a very major part, because you can have the most excellent firewalls, but if, you know, someone clicks on an email and exposes a system, then that can cause its own particular problem. So I would say that, yes, it is not something that we regard as positive, but I think what we should be judged by, and this is the totality of the governments, is how we manage to bring systems back online, and the fact that we will do it in a more secure fashion. This accelerated our work for making sure that we have a more secure and resilient government network.
Thanks. I heard you on the personal information, but people are really concerned about it. Is there anything in terms of potential loss of personal information that you can say to reassure people that their information is safe?
What I can say is that when we understand the full extent to which we're dealing with, I have no doubt that we will share those in line with any requirements that are needed under law and that is what the government of Bermuda will do.
Okay. On Thursday, you mentioned other regional governments. Are you able to say which ones were affected and how?
The information that I was given when the when the attack was first revealed was that there were other regional governments that had suffered similar items. I have not gone back to the person who gave that information, but I'm happy to, if you want to send a request, I can happily get that to you.
And then, so that would be where the speculation that it might have come from within Russia would have come from as well?
I'm not going to get into so far as speculation that it may or may not have come from Russia. Last week, I gave a press conference. I always believe that it is important as an elected representative to be as transparent as possible. I shared the information that I had at that time, and the information that we had at that time was they were from enterprises from that region.
And government is still able to bring in revenue and meet payroll?
As I said inside of my statement, the teams are working to ensure that just as we did weekly payroll last week, we'll be able to complete monthly payroll this week.
In terms of, I guess, build back better, is there a plan to prevent a repeat of the situation?
So work on improving cyber defenses is something that any company and any organization will tell you is ongoing, and it will continue. I think that there is not a question about how things are heightened, because as I said, ministers at this, who are standing here with me today, have had their accounts disabled because they haven't completed things. These are the types of stuff which you have to do, and that's a frustration that people have in many private sector enterprises and other types of enterprises. We're going to continue the work to improve the level of security because it is critical, and that is an effort that we've been engaged in over the years and something that we'll continue to engage in.
Do we plan on having a public inquiry into how it happened and how we dealt with it?
I'm sure that there'll be plenty of time for looking into things afterwards, and I will say that the government will be transparent with the Parliament should they wish to do so.
Have we had a cyber attack of any kind before?
I don't want to go into too much information, but what I will say, Jonathan, is, as I said in my statement, when the extent of the attack became clear, there was a need to take different actions than the responses which we may have had in the past based on challenges which we may have faced.
Is it maybe just one more?
Yeah, that's fine.
People did ask about this. If it's been able to spread to organizations outside of government but linked with government?
That is, I don't have any indication of that right now, but I don't only want to share facts. The key point is, with the Bermuda Police Service and the IDT department, they are continuing works along with our external partners to identify the full scale and nature and identify where we are able to bring back up government systems in a safe fashion. And that is the key point. The government is erring on the side of safety versus speeding up. And so from this aspect, I am confident, ministers are confident, that the teams that we have in place are able to get us where we need to be. However, the key point is we want to do this safely, and that means that it might take a little bit longer because we want to ensure that we minimize the possibility of future challenges like this.
Somewhere down the line, will it be possible to get details on whether it was a ransomware attack and whether personal information is safe?
As I said, once the investigation is done, and as you said, from any type of inquiry, we will do our responsibility to be full and transparent with any of those requests that come to us.
All right, members of the media, thank you so very much. That winds today's press briefing. As you know, the government is regularly giving information as it relates to services that are affected, and we are keeping the public and the media updated. There will likely be something coming later today. So that concludes today's press briefing. Premier, do you have any last words?
All I have to say is that I am grateful not only to the public servants who are working around the clock, members of the private sector who have offered assistance, and also the persons who you see behind me who have been working all weekend to ensure that we're able to maintain and stand up public services as we go forward. My thanks are also extended to the Acting Commissioner of Police and her team for the work of which they've done and the expertise of which they've been able to lend with our government information and digital technologies team. So this is a trying time, and I want to reiterate, as I just said to Jonathan, that the government is erring on the side of safety and security to ensure that we minimize any future challenges as we go through our restoration efforts. Thank you.